All right, so I think we're going to get started. And my expectation is that Seth will be joining us momentarily. Oh, that sounds like Seth.
Yeah, I'm on the telephone, but is there a password?
There is. It's a capital C-A-R-E, so care with a capital C.
Okay, I will.
All right, so good evening, everyone. This is Jim O'Brien. Thanks for being patient, and thanks for hanging in there as we sort of organized ourselves and sort of gracefully, or maybe not so gracefully, adjust to our new reality and get our meeting underway. So, so welcome to the Hopkinton School Board meeting for Thursday, April the 2nd, 2020. And so I'm gonna start off by just asking for a roll call of the board members so we know who is with us. And I know we're all muted, so when I call your name, just unmute yourself and give us a hello so we can see your face and know you're here. So why don't we start with Andrea?
Hello, it's Andrea Folsom. I am here.
Norm.
Hi, Norm Pupil is here.
Rob.
Good evening, all.
And Seth, I hope you've joined us.
I am here by telephone.
Perfect. Hey Seth, how you doing?
Good.
All right, well, thank you again, everybody, for joining us. And so I am going to do my best to facilitate as well as hop between a few things and share some screens with you. So the first thing we're going to do as we start our meeting is to do the Pledge of Allegiance. And so I've even provided a flag this week. So I'm feeling like, thanks to Steve, I feel like we're on top of things. So all stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty, justice for all.
Justice for all.
Well, thank you all. So, so because the state of New Hampshire and the town of Hopkinton is operating under the governor's declared emergency order, we are able to conduct our business meetings using this technology. So we are both conducting ourselves tonight over video as a school board, as well as allowing for the public to access our meeting both over the video, the Zoom conference, as well as also through a phone number that they can dial in and listen. Under normal circumstances, not more than a majority of the board would be able to participate in the meeting through not being there in person. But because of the governor's executive order, that has been waived, and so we are able to conduct our business in this fashion. So I would, I think just a few things, and for those of us who were with us last week will remember it's a bit of a different format conducting ourselves over Zoom, and so there's a few ground rules that I'd just like to ask everybody. The first is if you're not speaking, to keep you on mute. And Steve and I both are able to forcefully mute you. And so, you know, someone hops in and they're talking, or someone comes in and maybe not be respectful. We are able to mute folks. So I would just ask everybody to keep yourself on mute. But there is a way to get our attention, and so I'm gonna point out two. So if you scroll to the bottom of the page with your mouse, you're gonna see something called participants, and if you click on that, it's gonna bring everybody up to your right-hand side. It's gonna be a list of everybody who's on the call. and you're going to see that there's a button that says raise hand. And so if you click raise hand, I will be able to see, as Andrea just did, I'm able to see next to your name on my screen a little hand that gets raised. And so that allows me and Steve to be able to know who wants to speak. And we can then call on you at the appropriate time to speak. And then for public comment, which we'll talk about a little bit later, how we're going to do public comment. But for those who are on the phone and or who are online and are going to wish to provide public comment, this is the process that we're going to use to queue people up to be able to provide public comment. I'll ask you to raise your hand at the appropriate time, and then we'll queue people up and call on you to provide public comment. And then, as I said, I'm going to do my best to put up. I say that as I'm looking for what to put up, as I'm going to put up documents that we're talking about or that we're using, so that for those who are following along online are going to be able to see some of the information we're talking about. So with that, I'm going to move on with the agenda and ask Steve if there's any additions or deletions on tonight's agenda.
No, the agenda is fine, Jim, but you're going to have to slide in public comment around the correspondence. It wasn't, we used last week's agenda as the template. So whenever you're comfortable to slide in public comment, if you would do that, that would be great.
That sounds great. And maybe I'll do correspondence first, Steve, and then we'll do the public comment. So is there any correspondence tonight that we should be aware of?
Yeah, there's a number in the correspondence folder. There's an email and an attachment from Scott Zipke, who sent a real positive email and just a collaborative document by a number of associations to the board's attention. So that's in the folder. There was an email, the previous board supported a friend of the courts or an amicus brief for a school funding case. There's some information in the correspondence folder about that. I did place a confirmation, just a checklist to make sure that we did follow all the regulations for remote meetings. I did create also as a correspondence a voucher. There's a voucher and manifest folder for the board. And the one last thing is I did receive correspondence board to notice that the construction manager and contract with BPS has been executed. So those are my correspondence for tonight.
That's great news on the BPS contract. And I would just ask on the amicus brief for board members, it's a lengthy document. I think it's about like 30 pages long. And so this was an action taken by the previous board. I would just ask board members if you have comments on that brief, if you have comments, suggestions, edits, to take a look at that. And to send those along to Steve in the next week to 10 days. Steve, is there a deadline on that for when comments would be appropriate?
I have to get them by April 10th. Okay.
So about a week. So if you have a chance to look at that in the next week and have comments, please send them to Steve so he can incorporate. So with that, thanks, Steve. We'll move on to to approve the minutes of our last board meeting of March 19th. Excuse me for slipping there. So if everybody has read them, I'll look for a motion to approve the regular board meeting minutes from March 19th.
I move to
I'll make the
approve
motion.
board meeting minutes.
So I got a motion from Seth. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, and as we did last week, each of these votes has to be a roll call. And so what I'm going to do is just state a board member's name, and then if you would just tell us your name and then how you're going to vote, that would be great. So Andrea, we'll start with you.
Andrea Folsom votes yes.
Norm?
Norm Gupel votes yes.
Rob?
Rob Nato votes yes.
And Seth?
Seth Aframe, yes.
Perfect, thank you. And Jim O'Brien votes yes. And so the meeting minutes of March 19th are approved 5-0. And so I would also ask the board for a motion to approve the minutes of the regular board meeting held on March 26th, 2020.
Motion to approve meetings from whichever date you just said. I can't remember.
March 26th.
March 26th. Thank you.
There's
Second.
perfect. So we'll do the roll again. Andrea.
Andrea Folsom, yes.
Norm.
Norm Poopel, yes.
Rob.
Rob Nato, yes.
And then Seth.
They frame yes.
Thank you. And Jim O'Brien is a yes, and so that's approved 5-0. Again, I apologize. This is a little bit clunky, but it'll get smoother as we go, I promise. All right, so with that, we have comments from the Hopkinton School Board, and so I'm going to start with Andrea. Andrea, do you have any comments tonight?
Great. You know, I have not left my house since the last school board meeting. So digitally, though, I again want to just give kudos. I've been on the phone and with email with teachers. They are doing a great job. I know that they are under a huge amount of pressure and are working many more hours than we probably even know. So just a big thank you. I think people are doing really great, and I really appreciate it as both a board member and parent.
Thanks, Andrea. Norm.
Sure. I just want the community to understand, I hear right now it's a tough time for everyone, with their job and with other things, and just let you know that, as a board member, I'm thinking of them and I understand how difficult that can be. I just wanted to say thank you to Steve and his team, Chris, Rebecca, Amy, and the new Beatles guy, Bill, for really good communication with the parents and with the teachers. It's just been a really good process with our kids with distance learning. And as a board member and as a parent, it's going well. For me, as a parent, it's been a lot. It's been very smooth. The kids are in a rhythm now. Of course, the kids miss their friends and stuff, but every day is a new day for us to say, hey, things are going to get better, and it's a lesson that they're going to learn in life. Lastly, I just want to say thank you to everyone who's in healthcare. It is a really hard job right now, and a lot of our community members are in the healthcare field, and for me, it's so important to show appreciation for what they're doing for us. My wife, she works in the healthcare field at some capacity, and my thoughts and prayers, as a parent, as a board member, as a community member, I really think that it's important that I show my appreciation to them. So overall, I want to say thank you to Steve, to this board for supporting our teachers, our students, and the whole leadership. And we will get through this. Just stay home.
Thanks, Norm. Rob. Oh. Rob, I think you were muted. There you are.
I went grocery shopping at the Market Basket today, and I think the thing that amazed me about that trip was how patient and how much cooperation was going on, and it reminded me of everything that's been going on in the school district. It's as bad as it is, it's sort of wonderful to see how people are responding to the situation. So thank you to everybody out there that's being both patient and cooperative.
Definitely. And Seth, any comments?
So I agree with Andrea. It's hard to know exactly what the community is feeling because we're not out in the community. We're in our homes. So from my perspective, in my own home, it's going well. Interestingly, as I was doing my work in the kitchen and the 10th grade was going on in the room next to me, I heard a Zoom call or a Google Meet call run by the guidance department of the 10th graders. And it was interesting for me to just hear kids talk about their experience. And, there's all sorts of good things going on and all sorts of difficulties. And it just made me appreciate what a challenge this is to meet every kid where they are, because they're in so many different places, to hear all these various comments, a lot of which, contradicted each other. But I wanted to congratulate the guidance department to take the forward step of figuring out a way to talk to the kids and validate a lot of the things they're feeling that are difficult to deal with. There are no good answers, but I was impressed with the effort and the idea that that was going to be a continuing thing to keep the lines of communication with the kids open.
Thank you. And I mean, I would only echo what everybody said, that it's the past couple of weeks have been incredible, from both the community standpoint and from just the district standpoint, and just watching our teachers and our administrators and the building principals not only respond and you know, come together, but you know, really lift the community. I just know I have 3 kids in the district, and just the amount of care that's been shown by the teachers and the staff to not only make sure they're getting the educational materials that they need in order to do the work they need to do, but just really the emotional support, and to know that, you know, the teachers are there for them and to help them out. It's been really amazing to see, and very impressive. So I just want to thank everybody for stepping up and doing that work. And so our next agenda item here is actually to hear from our leadership in the buildings, who are actually, I'm sure, tired and have been working really hard putting all those pieces in place. And so I'm actually excited to hear you know, directly from our building administrators for how things are going, what they're learning, what they're seeing. And so I don't know, Steve, should I hand it over to you first to sort of set this up? And you're muted.
Jim,
Steve.
real
There
quick.
you go.
Jim, did you want to do public comment once in this meeting at the end?
Yeah, we'll just do it at the end.
Okay, perfect. Just want to check. All right, sorry.
And because Ella just joined, Mr. O'Brien, if you would like a comment from the student rep to the board. That was my fault. She didn't get the password until like 9 seconds ago. So thanks, Ella. I don't know if you want to hear from Ella or go right to the admin.
I would love nothing more than to hear from Ella. Ella, thanks for joining. Sorry about the mix-up. How's it going?
All good. It's going well. Charlie should be here soon too. He just has to get to the password. I guess my only comment is that I think all teachers are doing really well with the remote learning. I just had my first successful online test today, and it went really well.
Congratulations. I hope you did great.
Thank you.
I'm sure you did great. All right, and when Charlie comes in, we'll circle back to him for some comment. So Steve, back to you.
Thank you, and certainly this gives me an opportunity to really appreciate the work of everyone, all the faculty, all the staff, but certainly administrators. We've doubled our leadership team meetings as well as check-ins almost every day with each other, just to making sure it was okay. So they've got their full of me lately, I'm sure. So this is a good distraction. We'll start with Bill. If you'd start, that would be great.
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Sure can.
Great. The reports tonight, we looked at three different things, as we often do: what's going well, what we're working on, and what we're more concerned about. A lot is going well. I'd say most things are going well. Teachers are really working hard. I'm really proud of them because it's been a challenge technologically more than anything else. And, you know, as I've used this term a lot, but we're sort of building the plane as we're flying it. And another thing I've often said is we're like creating a brand new school district with really no time to build it. If we had August free and then we had a couple weeks of September to get kids and teachers and parents all on the same page, it's amazing how smooth it would have gone. So considering that none of that could happen, it's been great. The vast majority of kids, I think, are doing well, from what I'm hearing for sure. Communication is pretty strong. I know this week I have scheduled, counting tomorrow, 16 video conferencing sessions between my PLC leaders, teachers individually, you know, kind of the meetings I might have in the hallway anyway, or in classrooms anyway, or after school. We're sort of doing a lot of those as well. And I think one thing we're going to find out at the end that's going well is are the all technology programs that teachers are learning, that I'm learning, that we're kind of forced to get proficient at very quickly. We're working on, there's always a small percentage of families who are struggling a little bit, and getting them on track. Obviously, families have lost jobs. Families are working at home. and it's a tremendous amount of stress on many families, probably on most. We're also working on sort of the thought that this could happen for the rest of the year. We don't know. I don't think so. Don't hope so. But I think in our heads we've got to figure this maybe for the long term. Interesting things that I'm just thinking about it today. We've got, if we do go the rest of the year, or even if we go into May somewhere, things like student placement and a master schedule, those things have to happen regardless. And we've never done those virtually before. So we're trying to think about ways to do that efficiently. And we're also always working on differentiation. You know, we have a certain amount of time we want teachers or students to work on this, but some kids obviously take longer than others. And so that's a piece we're working on. As far as concern, really mental health of all individuals. You know, we're plowing through, parents are plowing through, we're plowing through, but we've got to take a minute and get our exercise and get a chance to talk about this. And as the coronavirus numbers might increase during the month of April, that might increase stress. So I'm just concerned about everybody's stress levels and mental health. And I know, well, my job especially is to look after the staff. And so one thing that Steve asks every time we're together is, how is your staff doing? Is there anybody who's really struggling? So I'm keeping an eye on that. I know all the principals are. So that's my report. Any questions?
Any questions from the board for Bill? And if you do, just use the little hand raise.
Jim, can I ask a question?
Please do, Seth. Sorry, you can't raise your hand. I apologize.
Yeah, sorry. So Bill, you know, at the upper levels, I understand how, you know, kids are self-sufficient. But on the primary school level, it seems like it really is a shared parent-child project every day, because we can't just send these kids off and say to do the work. So what's the method of communicating with the parents and making sure that the parents are engaged, especially in those, you know, houses where you have working parents?
That's a great question. The teachers are really doing that a lot. I think the instructions originally through email, you know, we're using Google Classroom and using a program called Seesaw, which is sort of a digital portfolio program. Fortunately, for anybody who's a little bit technically proficient, it's not all that hard, but some people really aren't. I mean, I can think of a woman who is a grandmother, you know, raising her child, and heck, I'm a grandfather, doesn't make me old, but, you know, she is a little, just technologically has some difficulties. And so teachers will pick up the phone and just call and do tech support. Michelle Marino, and I know Karen Locke at Maple Street, and probably Chris, help me out, Donna Zecca at the high school are all providing a lot of tech support, as is Matt Stone and his group too. So that's a piece. But I do think it's a lot of TLC, a lot of picking up the phone, a lot of teachers using their cell phones. You can dial *67 and hide your number if you don't want it out there, but a lot of teachers really don't care, I think. So that's a big piece of it. But I think at this point now, second week, that piece is not bad. The other piece we're tweaking a little bit is how much time that parents and students are, you know, engaged in this. And I think, you know, we might need to think about not overdoing it either, because it's a lot. I could go on and on, Seth, but I'll stop at that.
Yeah, no, yeah. What's been the parent feedback as far as best as you can tell on sort of the amount of work so far?
I think maybe it's really hard to say. By and large, okay. A few parents are saying they want more, but if there's any parent that doesn't want what it is right now, it's too much. And it really depends on the situation. If they're working from home, if they've got siblings, or if the student has some complexity academically or emotionally, that really adds to it as well. But I think overall, not bad right now, but it's a challenge, certainly.
Mm-hmm.
I think Jim's muted there.
Sorry, I was muted. I muted myself. Norm, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, real quick. Bill, I just want to say, it's been a breath of fresh air every morning hearing you do a video. My kids are engaged, both kids, and one's not at your school anymore. has really enjoyed listening to you. I guess one of my things I was thinking about down the road is how we engage in kids with, how do you find with special needs? Are we reaching out to those kids? Do you feel like that we are coping with this distance learning? And my other question for you is, there's been a substantial amount of paperwork that my daughter has accumulated and filled out and stuff. What is the school's plan? Are they planning on taking this paperwork and providing another day where kids are going to be picking up this paperwork with the weeks to come? As a parent, I'm curious, and also I'm sure there's other parents want to know how that's going to go through.
Right. I think Steve may cover some of that later on. The first question, and it's funny because while we were waiting for it to go on, the school board to start, I was reading some emails, because I'm copied on most things. Case managers of kids who are identified with a disability are checking in nearly every day, either through some sort of video conferencing or a phone call or definitely email. And by and large, they're doing okay. It's funny, some of the kids who were, maybe struggling before we left for school closure, some of them find the digital learning to be pretty efficient for them. And so by and large, they're doing okay. If anything, part of our problem is every teacher wants to reach out to all the kids all the time because it's in their heart to do that, and they're all hard workers. So we have to also not overload parents and families with so much love, if you know what I mean. But by and large, I think that's going okay. The paper part, we talked about this, the leadership team, and without providing a lot of details, I think it's going to vary a little bit. I think we're looking at using our bus drivers to deliver paper safely, in envelopes and so on. And not, in my case, in my building, I think Christine might do a lot of the running off, and I might help her. We're not crazy about having teams of teachers come in at this point to do that for safety reasons. So we're still working out the kinks with that, but I'm especially K-2, 3 and up, not as much paper is needed, but K-2, I think they're going to get nice little packages probably delivered to them at some point.
Thank you, Bill.
Great.
Sure. Thank you.
Thanks, Norm. Andrea, you had a question.
Yeah, although Norm just covered one of them, I was also wondering how, I know last time we spoke, you said most families were able to connect to their teachers and connect with technology. And so I was just wondering how that's going, if most kids are able to connect with their teachers or classmates daily, and kind of what the plan is for the kiddos who aren't.
Great question. We've been using the term when kids go dark. That's a term, that's not a very nice term, but PK to 12. If we don't see a child responding, even within a day or two, we sort of have a protocol. The teacher reaches out first, and then I've reached out, and I could say I've reached out to maybe 3 or 4 kids that we were concerned about. And really, at our age, it's not really kids, it's families we're concerned about. And so as well. So in all 3 cases, both sort of came back and admitted that they were having troubles, or it varied. So so far so good. Really the key of all this is the classroom teacher, because they're the ones that are checking in every single day with kids, and so they're the ones who are really going to know if the student is doing well or not. Just like, frankly, they would if we were seeing them face to face. Well, maybe not just like it, but in the same way anyway. So I'm feeling pretty good right now that of our 300 and almost 20 kids, I think we've got a pretty good handle on all of them. Here's something funny. I'll just mention to close yours, Andrea, is we have 3 kids who want to start school this year, moving from another town. So I've got to place 3 kids in classrooms. I think 2 Ks and 1 first grade, or maybe 2 first grade, and got to figure out how does that work? How do I get them involved and get the teacher involved? And we don't have the registration materials back yet, but sometime in April we'll place them.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions from the board for Bill? No, Bill, before I let you go, I have to say that you are building up your own little fan club. I think you could go and give some concerts here in town and probably draw an overflow crowd. It's quite special to get those emails and those videos every morning. So I just want to say thank you from our family here. We really enjoy them, and it definitely makes the morning a little bit brighter. So thank you.
A little Mr. Rogers every morning. Thank you. I appreciate that. It's a lot of fun, and it's not a ton of work, and it's a good time. And maybe we'll do a PTA fundraiser, Andrea.
There we go. All right, so we're going to move up, I guess it's up the road, it's up a road anyway, to Maple Street School, and ask Amy to join us.
Hi, everybody. I just want to say, Bill, please remember that I can play cowbell, right? That was like my first year in the district when we did a song together. I can play some percussion. That's
You were
about it.
great.
Yeah.
More cowbell.
You can join me every morning.
That's right. So at Maple Street, I'm going to echo a lot of what Bill just said. I've just been so proud of the teachers and the staff there. Their response has just been exceptional. I know that they just transitioning to this remote learning platform, there were a lot of questions, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of unknowns, and my staff has really just risen in every area. Certainly there are times where we're all overwhelmed, but by and large, just really, really positive. The staff and the kids and the parents and the families, they've just been really open to us trying different things so that we can be able to figure out what is best for students in terms of, we had classroom students that had never used Google Classroom. That is something that's used a lot at the middle and high school level. We had a little bit of it being used at 4th and 5th grade. So for that to be rolled out as the primary modality has just been nothing short of amazing. But along the way, people have been really open to us needing to try new things, or just giving everybody some grace and latitude when we make mistakes. So that is going really, really well. Something that we're working on, and similar to what Bill said, is our responsiveness to students and families as we learn and grow, and how can we answer a question that in this rapidly changing environment. Sometimes I'll get an email from a parent in the morning, and by the afternoon, the answer that I would have given them is different, just because information is just coming so quickly. So we're working on our ability to effectively gather that information, process it, vet it, and then figure out what our responses would be. It's clear that our typical systems just are hard to follow during this time, from everything from a PLC meeting to posting an assignment. So we're just trying to be flexible and really implement our growth mindset that we can learn and provide information in this new way. The concerns, similar to what Bill said, there are a few students that are just not engaging or minimally engaging during this time. I've spent a lot of time this week sort of following up with those families to see what they need, providing support. You can imagine that there are some, very vulnerable families in the Hopkinton community, and, having to be all together for long periods of time, or if there was a difficult dynamic to begin with, this has sort of been, this situation has amplified that. And so we're really trying to reach out to those families in a way that's non-judgmental, but also to help provide the support that they might need. Our tech department, Matt Stone and his crew has done a great job deploying a lot of devices even after our initial drop-off day. He's been great about getting them ready. And, sometimes I think parents thought that they were okay, and then they realized, okay, I have 4 kids trying to work on 2 devices, and I need some Chromebooks. And Matt, the turnaround time for the tech department has just been great. I am like similar to Bill, I'm concerned about my staff. The work-life balance right now is really hard because, you're sitting in front of the computer, and then, just in the best of times, you can blink your eye and an hour has gone by. And, that's similar with this as well. 12, 14, 16-hour days, they're just not sustainable for your own mental health. So, I've been encouraging, teachers as well as the students and their families to take breaks when you need to, get out there and take walks, even if it's raining. It'll be good for you. But I do worry about, just our own mental health, being connected even when you can't be together. Those are challenges that are just, I think, new for all of us.
Thanks, Amy. Any questions from the board for Amy? And maybe Seth, I know I can't see your hand, so maybe I'll just ask you if you do have a question, just jump on in.
Okay.
And you're the only one. The other board members are going to raise their hand, so you are special right now. Rob.
Thank you, Jim.
Yeah, this is a question actually for Bill or for Amy or Chris if he's there. Have you come across any unseen costs for families or teachers in how this is all working out? And is there any way that we can support that if there are those unseen costs?
On my end, I had a couple of families that didn't have a stable internet provider, and Matt has been great about getting that information to families. The other thing that I'm working on right now are trying to connect with those families that might now be eligible for a free and reduced lunch, and encouraging them to complete the application and take advantage of what Michelle and Tracy Barker have provided with the meal pickup. So as far as devices, certainly we've had kids say, my mom bought me a Chromebook and it's not even Christmas. So I think that those were costs that they incurred on their own, but those two, certainly when we're thinking about more vulnerable or needy families that have come up and how we've responded.
Thank you.
I don't know, Bill or Chris, if you guys have any response to that, if you want to.
I was worried at first that teachers might put a lot of money into things like technology programs, but so many companies are doing free stuff right now. They're extending their free trials. They're obviously hoping you'll stay on when the trial's done, but no, I haven't heard of that, of any particular. I think there's a lot of emotional cost, but not financial that I know of.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right, any other questions for Amy? All right, Amy, thank you for everything that you're doing. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, so next we're going to hear from Chris about the middle high school.
Thank you, everyone. It's good to see everyone, even though it's on an online format. I'm going to just go in reverse order here. I guess I'll start with my concerns and end with the real positive stuff that I've been seeing. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to take that liberty. I share a lot of the same concerns that Bill and Amy have, already shared. One of the things that Rebecca and I have been talking a little bit about was, just the social and emotional well-being of our students during this time, the social isolation that they're experiencing is something that's, been on my mind. Because I think they're also realizing, coming to school every day is a positive thing for them. Being able to see their kid, their friends every day in the break setting, in the lunch setting, or just in the halls is something that they're really missing right now. And just some of the conversations I've had, either with the seniors earlier this week or just with some of the staff via email that I've had, those conversations. So just the engagement piece is a concern, and how they're, just missing that right now is just something I'm just struggling with. How do we help with that? They're pretty socially connected, but I think that gets old pretty quick. Because I just know looking at a screen all day, it's long. It makes our days long. One of the other concerns that we've been talking about is just, the amount of work. Teachers are really working hard, but trying to find that balance between the amount of work given within the time frame of the schedule that we've set up, and then doing the amount of work outside of school, making that switch from being in front of the students every day to an online format. It's not easy for teachers, and they're working hard to make that switch. And we're just looking for ways that we can continue to help and support them. So we're going to be giving them some ideas tomorrow. Rebecca and I have been talking, so we're going to be sending them some information tomorrow, some things to consider about how do we think of this differently in our approach. Our teachers at the middle and high school, they take their job very seriously. They want to have rigor in their classroom, and letting go of some of that, with the number of competencies they want to make sure that they're covering the amount of curriculum they want to teach. I don't know how we do it all in this format. I'm not sure that you can. So trying to figure out how we balance that now moving forward is something I think we're just going to have to continue to work on, and I know that they will. So those are just some of the things we're working on, the concerns, if you will. You know, on the social emotional front, you know, I've had students reach out to me just to say hello. I'm sure Rebecca has too. And one of the things that's, I think, is helping with that we're working on, and it was brought up earlier by Steph, are the class meetings that our school counseling department has been holding. Those have been informative. I was able to join the senior meeting the other day. The meetings that have continued after that, unfortunately, I've had other meetings, either IEP or leadership team meetings, so I haven't been able to jump in. But, you know, that's where we're hearing some of these concerns around workload. But I'm also hearing a lot of appreciation from our students, too, for the work the faculty has done for them. So I think they also understand that our teachers are working hard. This is not an easy situation for anybody. And one of the things I've been trying to do on a couple days a week, there's a nice principals network that's been happening 2 days a week, typically on a Tuesday and Thursday. And I can, you know, it makes you feel a little comfortable in an uncomfortable situation that we're experiencing a lot of the same things that other schools are experiencing. You know, how to assess our students online, how to teach them online, how to make that jump. Some schools did it with only 2 days. We had 5, so I was really appreciative of the fact that we had the 5 days to prepare for it. But we're in the same boat as every other school, high school, middle high school across the state in regards to that. So, you know, I'm learning a lot from what other schools are doing, what they're thinking about, what they're moving to, whether it's a schedule or a change in their grading practices. You know, when it comes to thinking about what, you know, has really gone well and just, you know, really, you know, things that I'm really proud about, you know, is just how our staff has responded. You know, I think across the district, you know, I've been in this district for 15 years and I've always heard about why people move to this district. And if people could see what's going on from Bill's building to Amy's building to our building at the middle high school, it is action and emotion. It is it just confirms everything we've heard over the last 15 years about what makes Hopkinton Hopkinton. It's dedication to the students. It's dedication to a profession. I'm really proud of our staff, whether it's our office staff, our teaching staff, our instructional staff. Amy Cook, as our school nurse, has been a great resource over the last couple of weeks. And as I said to the seniors the other day, you know, I'm really proud of them as well. They are really showing a lot of grit, resiliency, and being persistent in trying to find their way to navigate through this new normal for themselves. This is not easy for them as well, but they're working hard to make the best of it. And just another example of just trying to make the best of it, you know, Dan Mazurs really was trying to figure out how do we do our athletic awards night at this time of year. He organized the Flipgrid for our athletics. And so they were doing a digital athletic awards night. So I was able to do a video tonight to congratulate the girls Nordic team. They made a video to present the plaque to me like they've done in the past. You know, as nice as it is to have that, it just is sombering to know that we're not able to do this in person anymore. It just gives you an opportunity to realize, you know, these things that we do in Hopkinton are pretty special. So we're continuing to work on just collecting feedback with a student check-in form that we put out to students in grades 9 through 11. We're working on middle school now. We've been working on a revamp of our schedule that will give more information out next week, or tomorrow to start next week. So it's not been boring, I can tell you that. It's been a learning curve in a lot of ways, but it's also been reassuring that we have a great team working with us in the Hopkinton School District.
Thank you, Chris. That was great. Questions, Andrea? You beat me to it.
Yeah, Chris, I was wondering, I know that standardized testing has been suspended for this semester. So I was just wondering what the plan is.
So from what I understand, the waiver that the state has put forward has gone through. One of the things they may be looking at is doing the standardized testing in the fall. That's the last bit of information I've heard from the state. So we're just waiting to hear more information on that. So AP testing, since you brought up standardized testing, the College Board has worked to move the AP testing to be done online. And it will be a 45-minute test, so not as long as it would be if you were to sit and do, paper to pencil. So maybe our students will like that, maybe they won't. So we'll continue to work on getting that set up as well, and how to, for our students when that happens in May.
Great, thank you.
Welcome.
Norm.
Hey, Chris and Rebecca, I just want to say thank you for great communication to the students. And I've seen the emails you guys have sent to the students, and it's been really clear, and especially the amount of support that you've asked, you've given out to them. You've mentioned to many of the students, say, please contact us if you have any questions. Between you and Rebecca and the guidance counselor, it's been a great thing to see. Owen's been adapted to it. He's actually kind of liked it, being able to go upstairs, get something to eat, and go back to virtual classroom. But he's actually really engaged, really enjoying it. Of course, he missed seeing his friends, but I just want to say, to all three of you, I have a kid in all three buildings, so it's kind of a unique situation. They have got the hang of it. Of course, they miss their friends, but to summarize, not my question, my comment is a huge thank you to all three of you, and Rebecca, for really giving us a sense of, as a parent, comfortability, that they're really engaged in learning still, because this is a really hard time for everybody. So thank you so much.
Welcome.
Thanks, Norm. Andrea, do you have another question? Go for it.
I do have another question, and actually this might fall more under distance learning update, so if it needs to be tabled till then, that's fine. But I was wondering, for not just for you, Chris, but for Bill and Amy as well, how many teachers at this point are you seeing coming into the schools? I know when we got the stay-at-home order, I believe going into school is still considered essential in order to provide distance learning. But I also know that we all want to stay at home as much as possible. So I didn't know if you've seen a decrease or a change in that at all.
I think for the middle high school, it's in the beginning it was more frequent because there were materials they wanted to pick up. It's much less now. We have a couple teachers in the science department that come in just because of connectivity. It's just easier for them. And I did have a chance to see Sue Roberts in the building yesterday, but she was just picking up a piece of technology so she could do some work at home. So it's very, very limited. There are some teachers that just want to come in and pick up a few things, but they're not staying. It's just come in, pick something up, and then go about their day.
At Harold Martin, it's very, very few. I was in all morning today, making some phone calls at Harold and so on, and didn't see a single teacher. Christine was in for a while, our office manager. They're really supposed to contact Noah, our facilities director, if they go in, so they know what part of the building to clean. And they usually throw me an email too.
I would echo what they're saying. I have a few teachers that are going by to get a particular item. I do have one staff member who I think because of the nature of his work, he needs access to a lot of protocols and tests and things. So his office it's kind of hard for him to take all of them home. A lot of the testing instruments are in a suitcase, so there's just a lot of them. So I think he's finding that he needs to be able to access his office. But it's very similar. When I've gone in, I've maybe seen Noah, but not very much of anything else. People coming in quickly, getting something, and leaving again.
Thank you.
Jim, I had a question.
That's really good to hear. Sorry.
Go ahead. Chris, my question was, are you seeing more teachers using sort of the Google Meets to actually interact with the class, or when I watch my 7th and 10th grader, I see a mix. I see some classes where there's actual interactiveness with the teacher, and then there are some where it really is more of an online, you know, like watching VLAX, sort of here's the assignment. And I would note that watching my children, their energy level is increased when they have had interaction with the teacher through some, you know, actual face-to-face virtual contact. So I was wondering, you know, if that's been the feedback. That's what I would see from at least my anecdotal experience.
Thanks, Seth. Yeah, it is a mix, and that's another thing that Rebecca and I've talked about in regards to like simply like taking attendance. You know, one of the things I said to her, I think we need to move to asking teachers to do that Google Meet if they're not doing it already, just to make that connection. As we know, connections with teachers are important, and it's one more piece I think that we need to get better at as we go through this or move through this journey, if you will, just to kind of hold on to that remnant of a community. You know, how do we do that online? Well, if we can see each other like we're interacting now, I think that helps. So I think we have to move in that direction to get more of our teachers doing a little bit more with the Google Meet, even if it's for 5-10 minutes at the beginning of class. I think that goes a long way with just continuing to maintain those connections and maintain relationships.
Yeah.
I don't know if Rebecca wants to add in on that too.
You're doing a great job.
Any other questions for Chris? Norm, another one. Norm, do you have a question?
Yeah, real quick. I just want to say I'm happy to hear that you guys are actually reporting that when someone goes there that it's cleaned afterwards. That's really, really great to hear. I just have one quick question, maybe for Steve can answer this. At some point, do you feel the district's probably going to make it so we don't have anyone go in there unless it's an absolute necessity? I understand there's the option of teachers wanting to go there, you know, if they want to be able to be comfortable, but do you feel that maybe it may get to the point where it's a no-go?
Yeah, it may get there, you know, whether it's a shelter-in-place order from the governor or, you know, an increase that's something we're not comfortable with, sure. That's something we're monitoring. I was on a DHHS call today. They were talking about hotspots and community spread. So it's something we're definitely monitoring. We spent some time, we'll talk about it under the distance learning section, about how to create the next set of packets in a safe way. I think we're okay now, but yes, to answer your question, Norm, we are definitely monitoring it. We'll heed all DHHS and governor direction to make sure we keep our faculty safe.
All right, any other questions for any of our building administrators before we move on? And then I guess, Steve, I don't know if you want to wrap up. This is sort of putting you on the spot, which I don't mean to do, but I just didn't know if you had any sort of any last thoughts that you might want to add here.
No, just very appreciative. I admire this group. I admire our faculty and staff. You know, one of the, Jim, you and I have talked about, this is an opportunity to learn. One of the things that I moved into this office and continue to get real engaged with, I'm learning a lot from these people who are zoomed in, learning a lot from teachers. I just really appreciate it, and we're going to continue to develop our approach as we go, constantly improve. And I really admire the attitude and the support everybody's given, and appreciate the community as well. So thank you.
Thanks, Steve. All right, and before we move on to the next agenda item, I know our other student rep had joined a little bit late, and so I just wanted to give Charles DeCurtis a little opportunity if he had any comments that he wanted to make. Thanks for joining us, Charlie. Oh, maybe you. I'm gonna have to unmute you, maybe. So give me 1 second.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Oh, there you go. Yep.
There we go. Sorry, my actual mic was muted. Well, it's good to be here. It's been a while since I've been to one of these meetings with all the chaos that's been going on. Really, I just wanted to say I hope everyone is staying safe and healthy. And I also just wanted to completely agree with everything that's been said so far. I can tell you, from what I've seen, I can tell a lot of effort and work and time is being put into making sure that this is the best possible scenario with everything that's going on for all the students. And I definitely have to agree with, I think it was Mr. Kelly who said it, about increasing the amount of, like, having all the teachers have a Google Meet at the beginning of class just to get that kind of interaction. I think that really helped a lot of the students. So that's it, really.
Nice. Well, we're very excited that you were able to join us. So thank you. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
All right. So we're going to move on the agenda, which, so everybody knows where we're at. We are here under items for discussion, and our first item is going to be some school board business. And the first item under that is going to be our public comment during remote meetings. And so I'm going to ask, bear with me for a second, because I'm going to try to talk through how we're going to plan and do public comment, and then I'm going to ask the board if they are comfortable with how I'm proposing we do this tonight, and then we can make adjustments as we go. So as everybody, last week, as everybody knows, was our first, I guess, virtual meeting. And so I think we're really just trying to figure out how we're going to communicate amongst ourselves as a board. So we chose not to do public comment. And that was really a temporary decision. It was for that one meeting so we could get comfortable, as comfortable as we can with the technology. And so from last Thursday into early this week, I had some really good conversations with Steve and Andrea about how we could put together a public comment that serves everybody's needs, both for the public to understand how to access these meetings, how to be a part of them, and then I think for the board to be able to respond to public comment. And so there's sort of there's sort of two governing principles, I guess. I don't know what the right word is. I'm struggling to find them. So the first one is, I'm just going to share this, is an existing policy that the board has. The board approved this policy last year. The policies are on our district website, so the public and anybody else could go on and see. And so this is a policy that just governs public participation. So we do all of our public participation per RSA 91A. And in each of our meetings, anybody who's attended or has watched one of our meetings, in normal meetings, we have two sets of public comments, one at the beginning of the meeting, one towards the end of the meeting. And, you know, really these guidelines are just asking the public to, you know, to conduct themselves in a civil manner, that there's some topics like personnel and other personal issues not to be brought up. And, you know, we try in public meeting, in our meetings, to ask the public to be brief. We don't really have a stopwatch on, but, you know, to keep comments to 2 or 3 minutes. So we are going to abide by these public participation policy and guidelines as we do our virtual meetings, as well as when we eventually get back together again. So in this case, since we're meeting virtually, there are some differences. And so we've set up a little bit of a different parameter. So all of you who are joining us and watching on video on Zoom are going to be able to, when we get to that point later on in the agenda, to provide public comments. And so what we're going to ask you to do is, and I'll give these instructions again as we get closer, is to raise your hand. It enables me as a facilitator to call on you. We can unmute your line. And you can provide your comments, and if there's a question, we'll try our best to answer them. And so this really works for us only if you're logged into Zoom, because we can see, we can identify you and then see you and then call on you. As Seth knows, as someone who's calling in, it's a lot harder because, you know, you're not seeing what's being said. I have no way as a facilitator to know if you have something to say. And if I unmuted everybody's line who's calling in, it's going to be really hard to facilitate that conversation. So for now, we're asking the public, if you wish to comment, to log into Zoom. I know that's an inconvenience for some, but in order to sort of manage the meeting, that's, I think, currently how we're hoping to do this. I will say that, you know, public comment is one way to speak to the board. And, you know, we also want to encourage people who have questions or they have comments that they would like to reach the school board. All of our email addresses and contact information is available on the district website. So we encourage any member of the public to please be in contact with us, send us emails, and then we have a correspondence folder. And so if we're getting emails, they go into that correspondence folder. All board members have access to it. And know that we all do read the emails that come to us from members of the community. So I just want everybody to know that this isn't the only opportunity to address the board, that there are other opportunities as well. These meetings are being recorded, so they will also be available as our other meetings were on our website. And so I'm going to stop sharing that. And then I guess I'm just going to ask members of the board if you have any comments on that I know was sent earlier, or any concerns with sort of how that's being set up before we move on to other agenda items. And I'm going to take silence as people being okay, unless there's an objection to that. All right, perfect. I appreciate that. So we will do public comments a little bit later in the meeting, but that will be the process by which we'll take comments. So next item under board business is committee assignments. At our meeting a couple weeks ago, we went through the committees of the board that we have had, and then I've raised, I think, the possibility of having two additional committees for the board. And those, actually, I'm going to pull this up so everybody can see what I'm talking about. I realize I can see what I'm talking about. I can see the documents I'm referencing, but you all can't see what I'm referencing. So. So here are the committees that are being recommended tonight. And so we have a representative to the Hopkinton Budget Committee. And then a couple weeks ago, we spoke about adding two additional committees. One would be a finance committee that the members would meet regularly with the superintendent and the business administrator to review financial documents and processes and bring recommendations forward. And then we also spoke about having a committee of board members around capital improvements, a CIP plan, and to work with Steve and Michelle on developing that CIP plan moving forward. And then those would be the two new committees that if the board wants to move forward with, we would I guess approve and ask for members. The other committees that are existing are the policy committee with two members to serve on negotiations, 2 members to serve on the building committee for the $9.7 million building project, a professional learning, wellness, and the sick bank. So over the last couple weeks, I've gotten to speak with I think actually I spoke with all the board members several times over the last couple of weeks, but some of the conversations we had was really about interest that board members have and which committees they might want to serve on. And so I am going to show, so we have, excuse all my clicking and pausing here, a slate that I'd like to recommend based upon those conversations. And then after I present this, we can open it up for discussion. So the budget committee rep would recommend that Norm Gupel serve on that, on the budget committee to be the rep. And then I would ask that, see if Norm and Rob would serve on the finance committee being put together. For CIP, I would recommend myself and Andrea. On policy, would ask would ask Andrea and Seth if they would be willing to serve on the policy committee. Negotiations, Andrea and myself. On the building committee, Norm, who's been serving on that committee for the past year, and then ask if Rob would be willing to join the building committee. Professional learning, ask if Seth would join. Wellness, ask Andrea, and then we have the HEA Sick Bank, which is a committee that meets as needed and sometimes only meets through email, and that sounds like the perfect committee for me. And so I would recommend myself to serve on that committee. And so that's the slate, I think, based upon the conversations that we've had over the past couple weeks. And so maybe I will be quiet now and then ask any board members if they wish to comment on that, or if there's any changes that want to be made to that slate.
Jim, I will just say it'll be an honor to serve on the budget committee. I want to be clear that I really support the two committees that you put forward, the Finance Committee and the CIP. I think bringing that information to the Budget Committee is something that they're going to really want to see, and I really look forward to working with Rob and Andrea and Seth and you on really a new format, and with Steve and with Michelle on how we can present a transparent and budget so this community understands. So I just want to say it will be an absolute honor to represent this team in the budget process and really finding out what we can do. Thank you.
Thanks, Norm. Any other thoughts? Does that all sound good to the board? Again, I'm going to take silence as approval, which is sometimes very dangerous. Rob?
It's approval.
Yeah, Jim, I'm really comfortable with what we talked about in terms of the two committees that I would be associated with, and I think the addition of the two sounds like a really good plan. So yeah, I would support that slate.
And Seth,
I support the slate, Jim. Seems well put together.
I'll throw in my support as well. I was going with silence as support, but I actively support.
Perfect. Okay, so we will implement those committee assignments, and then I believe we have an action item tonight, which would be to appoint Norm Gupel to serve as the Hopkinton Budget Committee rep, and so we can do that at the tail end of the meeting. But that would be our only action item. The other ones don't need to be voted on. We agree by consensus to do those committees, and then we can change those if we need to moving forward. So thank you all. Thank you all for helping put all that together. Rob, I see your hand up.
Does the alternate for the budget committee need to be approved, or does that happen on an ad hoc basis?
Steve, that's probably a good question for you, because I'm not sure I know the answer to it.
In the past, if it's just a substitute for a meeting, it's been who's available, because it's difficult if it is for a longer term and they can't serve, then we go to an official vote. But if Norm can't make a meeting, sometimes he just who can make it, and it's just whoever can go.
Thank you.
All right, so we will move on to the next topic, which is the school board topic schedule moving forward. And so I'm gonna, again, try to switch screens here. So give me 1 second. And find the right document. So, so I think, as all the board members know, we had set up, I think, before the current crisis happened, to have a organized orientation schedule. Maybe that's not the right way to say it, but a series of topics really get us all on the same page, to have some pretty good discussions on big topics, so that we could sort of orient ourselves as a new board, kind of get a good sense of a lot of moving parts, and really spend the first few months as a board sort of getting a good orientation. Unfortunately, with circumstances, a lot of that scheduling has shifted. It hasn't all gone away. We have done some of it. Like last week, we had a really good deep dive into the building committee process, where they were. So Steve and I have been discussing, how to take a lot of that orientation that we had talked about and move it into both a virtual environment, what we're doing here today, and then looking at the next couple meetings and trying to put some of those topics back into the calendar. And so here we are on April 2nd. So congratulations, we can check that box off. And so what I'm recommending is on our next meeting on April 16th, that we ask Steve to give a good overview and a good presentation for us, and also for the public, around the district mission that has been established, that the district's been operating under, that administrators and teachers operate under, and to do a deep dive on district mission. And then also ask for a presentation, what we're calling Budget 101. It may be more of a Budget 201 or 301, I guess, depending on how advanced we get. But really to help us all, again, us all and members of the community understand a little bit better, how the district does our budgeting, both on the revenue and expense side, how those budgets look, some of the moving pieces, and really allow us, all of us as board members and new board members, to ask questions about the budget as it stands, ask questions of how the budget's put together. And I think this would be especially great as a sort of a kickoff for the finance committee, to sort of wrap their arms around the budget a little bit more. And then we have, for board discussion, we'll have some the administrator nominations, policy committee, and then our monthly financials. And then our first meeting in May, we'll again have policy, and then ask Steve to do a second presentation on the district's Magnificent Seven, again, to orient us on sort of the mission, and then the Magnificent Seven, and how that's being felt in the classroom and how it's being implemented. These are things that we had talked about doing. This moves that calendar back a little bit, but it still provides us with enough planning to be able to put these pieces in place. And then it gives us the opportunity to also invite the community to come in and learn about those topics along with us as a board. Again, I'm going to stop yapping and see if there's any questions or thoughts from the board about those sort of topics and how we're scheduling. And then also if there's any suggestions for additional topics. I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but if there's any additional ideas for topics, we could think about including those in upcoming meetings. And of course, you don't have to answer that now. If you have ideas, and reach out to me or Steve, and we'll make sure we get them plugged in. All right. So I'm going to take silence as approval. This is good. I'm going to try this with my kids. Maybe I'll try it when they're sleeping, and then they'll always approve. All right. So the next item on the agenda is good. I think I'm gonna turn over the speaking role to Andrea. Is to talk about a little an idea around school board communication. So Andrea.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Jim. Now I get to talk into the void. So coming onto the board, I have been really interested in communication. I think we're seeing right now in this day and age how important it is, but it's something that I think that we can improve upon, and I'm excited to help us do that. So I had a couple of ideas, and I wanted to put this out to our fellow board members. Just as far as getting what we're doing out more to the community with more consistent communication. So more consistent updates about what we're doing, what we're working on, what's working, what's not working, and any other information that we feel would be helpful. Sort of just batting around ideas, an initial one that comes to me is every week our principals put out the Scoop at Harold Martin, the Skim at Maple Street, and Hawk News at the middle high school. And I think that a bi-weekly kind of school board update would be great. And this would be something that's coming from the board. It's not necessarily coming from our superintendent or from our administrators, but it's something that we can take a little bit more ownership of to put out information to our community. I'd also, though, be interested, and I've been brainstorming and haven't really come up with anything, on other community-wide newsletters or ways that we can reach our broader community. Because I think that, you know, our schools and our community are so entwined that I think it's really important that whether or not you have children in the school, you know what's going on. I think it helps people feel connected, and I just think it's generally good. So if anyone has any ideas as far as outside of the schools, that would be great. Another thing that Steve and I have talked about, sort of, again, sort of bantered back and forth. I know that Bill and Amy, or Amy and Bill, do the Bill and Amy or Amy and Bill podcast that comes out, and it can be really helpful. And they've really switched to doing some great evergreen content, which means content that whether you listen to it this week or in a month, it's still helpful. So I think we're going to capture some of the presentations. Steve and I had talked about capturing some of these presentations that he'll be doing on Zoom, and perhaps cutting off bits of the meeting so that we can present those or have those available to the public. So when people are saying, well, what is you know, the Hopkinton School District mission? Here's a video where you can actually watch a presentation on that. You know, what is our Magnificent Seven? Here you go. Just other ways that we can get this really good and important information out to the wider public. So those were a couple of ideas. I just think, you know, in general, having a communication plan and having consistent communication is helpful for everybody. So I welcome any input. Oh, it's the silence. So everyone agrees. Super. Oh,
Andrea,
Rob raised his hand.
in terms of the biweekly board update, are you thinking like folks on those committees that we just talked about would put together a brief summation of what's gone on in the past 2 weeks, if there's been any updates? Is that the kind of thing that you're thinking about?
You know, I think it's something that we could figure out a little bit along the way. I think keeping it simple is helpful. You know, I currently write the ones for the PTA, and I try to keep them pretty short. People get a lot of information, and the last thing I want to do would be to provide folks with unhelpful noise. But I do think that absolutely, I think a lot of the information that will be coming out of those committees, as far as here's where we are in the budget, or here are upcoming meetings, just having that information, yeah, would be helpful. I don't know, what would you think about that? In favor?
Well, Andrea, I think you know, you've done a great job with the PTA and communication. You know, I've seen it firsthand, and I would absolutely love to see something like that on the board. I would love to, you know, when we send something out that's from the board, we make sure we all have seen it and that we all agree with it. I think that's important. We want to encourage the public to interact with us here at the board meetings. That's one thing I really want to stress. You know, in this meeting alone, we have a total of 36 participants, which I think is great. And we have never had that in a board meeting alone itself. So I think a summary to the community at some capacity is a fantastic idea. This way we can have them, you know what's going on, but also give them opportunity that they have questions of what's going on to come to our board meetings to ask questions or submit something in writing so we can answer it timely.
But Andrew, I think you make an excellent point that it's important to think about ways to disseminate beyond the school constituency. And so I don't know, I know there are various people who publish things in town about events and have different, internet platforms from which they do that, but figuring out what the best ones are so that we're not just talking to the school community and we're talking to the whole town, so that people really understand what we're doing, I think is a critical part of this. So I'm not an expert on that, on what the best places are, but I'm sure if we asked people, they would tell us.
Yeah, I agree.
And
That's my
I
hope.
think we should think about that really hard as we go forward on what's a really good idea.
Great. All right. Well, if it's okay with the fellow board members, then maybe in the next week or two, I can start putting some things together, and then we'll send it out to you all first for some thoughts before. Obviously, I won't just unilaterally send stuff to everyone. But yeah, so we can get moving on this. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrea, and thanks for bringing the idea forward. I think it's great, and it would be a huge service, I think, to the town. I also think it's good to share it among the board, and so we can all edit it, we can all add to it, and get agreement on it. That's great. So thanks for volunteering to spearhead it. We really appreciate it. All right. So I am now going to turn it over to Steve to talk about distance learning updates and personnel issues, personnel matters. I shouldn't call them issues. So Steve.
Sure. Thanks, Jim, and thanks to everybody. Just a couple of things. What I've tried to do, I'm trying to meet regularly with the heads of our Hopkinton Educational Support staff and our Hopkinton Education Association. Checking with them weekly. Met with Scott and John today. Leadership team, we're going to meet twice a week and then try to get feedback and respond pretty quickly as we continue to develop our distance learning program. I appreciate that the School Boards Association, Principals Association, Special Ed Association, school administrators all got together and put together a document, and New Hampshire put together a document to take a look at expectations during this time. We know that teachers are balancing a lot, families are balancing a lot, administrators are balancing a lot. And we also knew, I think we put pretty clear that we were going to revise this every couple of weeks, get feedback and take a look. So today was our second meeting this week. We met for a few hours. And I think the building administrators are tightening the last bit about what our distance learning program is going to look like in the next 2 weeks. And I don't want to say it's a 4-in-1 day, but it is a different structure of the 5 days, where I think one of the terms that, like Amy talked about, is forward learning for 4 days, and then some enrichment, some connection, some alternative stuff. Rebecca and Chris talked about getting together kids on that not new instruction or new content day for clubs and for enrichment, for engagement, and we're going to take a look at how many hours of screen time kids' expectations are in entire educational time. And so I think our administrators are tightening up last collaborations with their school guidance and some teachers. And tomorrow they'll put out the second phase, if you will, for the next couple of weeks. And we'll get more feedback and we'll adjust. But it is going to look differently. The expectations of the day, as well as we look at the 5-day week, will look differently. I really appreciate their willingness to be nimble, to take a look at this and revise, and they're buttoning it up. And we'll try for the next 2 weeks and see how we're doing, because that's our spirit. So there will be a different structure coming forward from Bill, from Chris and Rebecca, and from Amy as we look at the next couple weeks. The next thing we talked about today was take a look ahead to April vacation. There's a lot of talk among the principals, of the school administrators, the superintendents, assistant superintendent, what's best in this environment. We actually are checking in with our staff. I actually checked in with all our administrators to take their temperature and how they are and their energy and how they're balancing work and life and home. One thing I think, Jim, you and I talked about, anytime I've ever done anything for calendar, any survey, it's usually 50-50. So, and when I asked the feedback from the administrators, they felt pretty close that it was, 50-50. But so the question is, as planned, do you take in this, the stay at home order, the social distancing, do you take vacation? We've had some families reach out to me and say, Steve, if you do take vacation, some kids, we worry about their ability to social distancing may fall apart as kids really may come together in a too close environment. Some are concerned about their health issues and the pressure to go out and lose that structure. Some, though, we understand it's a lot to balance, it's a lot to work. There's also regional impact. We am connected to Concord and to Bow and to our Southwest Regional, because it is, if Concord takes it and we don't, or we take it, we know there are some family issues there as well. One of the things I think what we settled on for the board to consider, and it doesn't have to be a tonight thing, is really, it may seem like that really is the happy medium. Maybe on both ends, long weekends, and you have some structure Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I'd have to work with John and Scott and Ann and Nancy. But it seems like that could provide some structure and some continuity. And if things did get better in June, we could get out a little bit earlier, giving a little bit more freedom, if you will, or different later in June. It does provide some rest. So that may be the best answer for kids. But it's tough to win on the, universally win on this. But I think Monday, Friday, for families, for administrators, for teachers, the email calms down a little bit, and then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, some structure to continue it, and for some kids keep some momentum and some continuity going. That's where we kind of fell, is what we are. I haven't talked to the Southwest region yet about that approach and see where they are, but I think that's where we settled in today with the discussion we had. So I don't know if you want to stop and talk about any of that stuff now, or the last piece was just a couple of the last piece as we started, especially with Kristen and Rebecca, and a little bit of sixth grade, talking, look at assessment. What does assessment look like in this environment? There's some pretty good experts out there, some stuff just to understand that a quality assessment is trying to, add validity and to make sure that we're measuring what we want to measure. And in this environment where many families are stressed, many families are under duress, high stakes testing right now probably wouldn't get the validity that we're looking at. So we're trying to assess in this environment, because we do know, as Amy said, some people are losing their jobs, some people are worried about being ill or relatives being ill, and there's a lot of anxiety to families and kids right now. So trying to get information about how they're doing, but in an environment that is supportive and understanding where kids and families are. So in summary, we are looking at a different structure, a 5-day contact with kids, but a different 4 and 1. April vacation, we kind of settled in, nothing committed, but we kind of settled in. Long weekends, but made some structure. Assessment, we're trying to assess in an environment that's best for kids. And we are developing plans for the next iteration of packets for earlier elementary. That's where we are.
Thanks, Steve. It feels like a Herculean task. It's
a lot, but it's great people. I get a chance to work with great people.
Rob, I think I saw your hand go up as we were talking about the calendar, so that may be what you're asking about.
I got 2 questions for you, Steve. So I'll do the 4-1 week first. As I was reading that document that came out, it seemed, my interpretation was that the 1 for teachers was an opportunity to catch up, because this is a very different workload and scenario. So I guess my concern would be, by having a 5th day as you're describing it, is going to add to that workload and not lighten that workload and give them that opportunity to clean up from the week and perhaps get ready for the following week. I'm not completely clear as to what you're suggesting that 5th day would look like, but I'm not sure it's in line with at least how I interpreted what had come out in the recommendation.
Sure, and I appreciate that is a body of recommendations that will certainly be formulated by what's best locally. It is not, the intent of that day is to relieve the pressure of teachers to plan for a full day of formal instruction. So that by itself, because it's not going to be day 1, day 2, it's not going to be formal instruction. We think that is itself relieves some pressure on teachers. I did speak with John and Scott today. We also understand, though, that that some kids during this process will need some extra time. They'll need some support, whether it's our IA support or teacher support. So how they connect with kids for some portion of the day, we think is a good thing. We think that is that variability, that flexibility to connect with those kids who need it. We think that's best for kids. We also have time where some of our unified arts and some of our other programs we think can expand to that time and provide some relief there. I'm not comfortable as your superintendent saying no contact with kids and no support of families that day. There is whether or not that would count as a student day and whether or not we're going to get enough days and how did that affect the end of the year. So we think it's the happy medium that it is. And when I spoke with John and Scott today, they talked about the relief of having to plan classes and formal instruction would be a break. But I'm not comfortable saying it's not a kid engagement day with kids and supporting kids and just making it a pure planning day. That's not where I am. But I am about changing it. And Rob, we'll take a look at it in 2 weeks and we'll revise again.
Sure.
But I think we're trying to thread the needle. Support for families, support for teachers, but also connect with kids who need some more time.
Thank you. So my second question was on the April vacation, and there's a lot of folks involved here, teachers and IAs and families, and I know it's sometimes risky business to do a SurveyMonkey kind of thing to get some broad feedback on where people sit with this. That's a big decision. I look at what's going on, and it's kind of like we're in the first week of a new diet, and no one really knows what it's going to feel like in 4 weeks. So I'm just wondering if you had considered doing a survey.
Yeah.
When I think of surveys, a survey that's got meaningful response, not 47 people replied.
Sure. Happy to do it. Happy to survey our staff. Happy to survey the community. There is some time to do that. Without question, talk with leadership team, would be happy to, and maybe that would go against my history of 50-50, but happy to put it out there and get feedback. This is, my dog in this fight is how can we support teachers and families and do what's best for kids. So happy to do that. I thought we threaded the needle pretty well with the 2-on-3, but I'm willing, absolutely, Rob, if we would like to put a quick survey out there for our staff and for the community to find out where they are, be pleased to do that. That is perfectly appropriate and happy to do it.
Thanks. I just think it would give us, a real broader snapshot of where people are at.
Absolutely.
So thank you.
Happy to do it.
That's all.
Thank you. All right. So Andrea, and then Norm's on deck.
Great. So sort of piggybacking off of those two thoughts, I guess my first one, and Steve, maybe you said this and it wasn't clear to me. Have you been able to talk to Concord yet? Do you know what they're going to be doing?
There was a regional text going around in this region. A couple of people are waiting to see. One of the things is if there is a real shot of us coming back May 4th, then we probably want to take the vacation, because then we get 5 student days back in June when we could have it. So some are trying to wait another week to see if the governor is going to say, look, we're out for the rest of the year. One district, like the hybrid, thought the hybrid threaded the needle right in the right way for continuity, consistency, and a break. I don't think Concord has said on the text that I saw a couple of days ago, they haven't yanked it yet, pulled for the week. And I can reach out. I know, actually, Rob and I know Frank, if you remember. So I can reach out to the superintendent. I talk to him every once in a while in Concord. So I have not heard that they pulled, but in full transparency, the majority of districts are taking, that I've heard so far, and Chris would are taking the full week. Full transparency, not necessarily. There's some aren't though. I do know of districts that are plowing. I think the word was plowing through, but I would say, in all honesty, the majority are taking the 5. And the feedback that I have got from teachers is honest. It's about 50-50. But I can find out in this time when we do the survey. I'll know more in 2 weeks. If we can wait till the 16th, I'll know more. I can certainly find out deliberately and purposely from Concord.
Yeah, I think waiting a week, I think that makes complete sense. And just kind of, again, circling back to the 4-day, 4 or 5 day flex, I know just speaking as a parent, that having 4 days of actual instruction and then that 5th day to do specials would be fantastic. Yeah. I think that it would still provide my children with something to do. But we don't always get to specials. I think that, and they're so important, that I think having that balance I
One of the things you'll hear in a couple weeks is the motivational strategy of voice and choice. And so we're going to try and give a lot of voice and choice in that day for families and for kids to choose activities. I think there's a bingo type activities where kids select. So we'll try to use, motivational theory about voice and choice during that time. But it will develop over time. We're looking at a 2-week more feedback and see how we're doing. I don't want to be locked in yet because, this is a journey. We're trying to get better and try things. And everything won't be perfect, but I think it is the next right step.
Great, thanks. Norm.
Yeah, I just wanted to be clear, Steve. What would be on this survey that you'd be sending out? I just wanted to be on the same page of what you'd be asking in it.
Well, right now, I'm certainly open to feedback, and the feedback can come outside of this meeting if you're thinking about it, because it'll be out in a couple of days. It would be the 3 option. We work through 5, we take all 5, or we do a hybrid, and which would be best. I mean, that's the 3 options that I've seen talked about in district is outside of district. You take all 5, you plow through all 5, or you take a combo. Which
so what is one of the recommendations is we actually take the week off of April vacation?
Yes, that would be one of the options. To be honest with you,
yeah,
I'd put it in as a recommendation, but I would not be in favor of working all 5.
I wouldn't.
My temperature.
I wouldn't be comfortable
with. Oh no, I'm sorry. You wouldn't be comfortable with what? I'm sorry.
I wouldn't be comfortable with us taking a week off. If we have distance learning implemented through May 3rd, I wouldn't be comfortable with kids trying to find something to do for a week.
Okay.
I would be really nervous about kids trying to find some way to keep themselves occupied. I know it may sound kind of maybe it's a bad board member thought process, but for them to work through it, it keeps them occupied at home. We're able to monitor them that they're keeping a distance learning plan. I mean, I'm just one board member. I understand and want to respect that we want to probably look at what Concord is doing and our other local schools, but for me as a school board member, I really want to focus on keeping this distance away from other individuals and from the community and really focus on flattening the curve. That's just my 2 cents.
Thanks, Norm.
And
Rob? Seth, go ahead. I'm sorry, you haven't got in yet.
So I would say, Steve, I think you're threading the needle is right, because you really have things to me that are going against each other. On the one hand, we want to give the teachers a rest. I can understand that. I can see where this is a lot of work. Teaching in this way is just very different. There's so much preparation I can see that has to go into it. It can't be healthy for the kids to have 5 days off, and even assuming they socially distance and we don't, it's a lot of unstructured time with really no good options for them, because we can't go anywhere and we can't do anything. So, I think you've hit it right to give the teachers an extra day here or there, which we could probably entertain the kids, but for 5 days, that's a lot of time to ask the kids to, find something to do in this environment.
Thank you.
I was going to ask my kids to paint my house, Seth, but
well, if you can get that done, Jim, you're a better man than I am.
I'm sorry. I should keep my snide comments to myself.
Just to get some direction with the board, I'd like to charge me with putting out a quick survey on this topic.
I guess I'm always worried. I've always worried about surveys that you end up, as you said, at the end you get the data and you throw up your hands. I'm not opposed to it, but at the end of the day, if we get 50-50, I think we just have to use our best judgment and do, what we think is right.
Thank you. No, I agree.
Steve, just
Rob,
in terms of the survey, and I'm not sure it would apply to the elementary schools, but asking the kids at the high school where their heartbeat would be on that. We all know how difficult it is when you're trying to have class and you got some folks who aren't excited about being there. If they've been looking forward to a break and 5 days a fortnight or whatever it is they're going to do, You know,
No, happy to work with Chris and
wanna
Rebecca about getting
ask
out to
those
kids,
guys.
and Amy too for some of the littles. That'd be fine. No, I'm with you. So I'll put something together for the group. We'll do students, we'll do staff, and we'll do community.
That'd be great.
Have it ready for the next meeting.
Yeah, so it sounds like we'll come back on the 16th, and we'll have, at that point, we'll have information from a survey. Steve, I'm sure you'll have a lot of conversations, so you have anecdotal,
Yep.
information to bring. We'll all, I'm sure, have thoughts and emails coming into us as well, and then we'll know what our neighboring districts are doing by the 16th, and then we can make a rational, informed decision as best as we can.
So should we, I'll just say I had an experience where I was asked, as an online class was happening and they were aware I was on the school board, I was asked to show my face, and they wanted to know what was happening with April vacation. And I said, I don't know what's happening with April vacation. And so I guess my concern is we're going to be dragging this out. I mean, what should we tell the students at this point to say, you know, this is when you should expect a decision? Because they're focused on it clearly.
Calendar has always been a board action. It does. I do need to get some time to spend with the associations. The HEA has a dog in the fight. I got to make sure they support HES and a board action. But changing a calendar that has been adopted by the board typically is a board action. And I don't have a great recommendation for you tonight, just except, you know, where I think I've landed, but with more information that could change. If that's all right, we could definitively do it on the 16th, and it can be a board action item.
Okay.
Is that okay?
That's an answer. Yep.
We'll have everything ready for the 16th for a board action item.
That sounds good. Thank you, Steve, for collecting the information and putting all that out there. Any other comments or thoughts, about the calendar or any other aspect of distance learning, I guess, before we move on? I don't want to cut anybody short. All right, seeing none. Steve, next item on the agenda.
Sure. It's, personnel, just a couple of things. At the last meeting, it was requested that we give an update where we are in hiring for 2021. I'll gladly do that. Just a quick update on the Director of Student Services search. We are down to the finalists. They'll be the finalists will be interviewed by the leadership team next week. And my hope is, if we can have a 5 o'clock non-public interview on the 16th with the candidate for Director of Student Services, that would be great, or 4:45 or whatever you'd like. But the hope is to have a candidate to you on the 16th and an action item that night about the Director of Student Services, because that is moving forward as our timeline. So that's going well. So a couple of things about 2021. We have at the secondary level, we have an English teacher and a guidance position open. Elementary, we've got a K-6 numeracy specialist, and we've got a nurse over at Herald. And those have been posted, or in the process of being posted, collecting, and we're at different stages of the process, including interviews for the director of guidance position at the secondary school. This process is a little bit funky and a little bit different than any that I've been involved in before, because we haven't adopted a budget. And so when we're now looking at hiring in 2021 without a budget, because obviously the annual meeting has been postponed twice, it's now scheduled for May 9th. That makes it awkward to move over on positions where you don't have a budget. So just a little bit about that. So our last date, the annual meeting has been postponed to May 9th. And that is the last date that we can have the meeting and still meet the statutory requirements of issuing the contracts by the second Friday in May. If you don't have a budget, that's May 15th. If we have a meeting on the 9th, then we can still meet that statutory obligation, issue the contracts, and that's great. And our hiring that we're doing now would be extended, through those next couple of weeks. One of the concerns is, it's a real concern, is whether or not we'll be able to have the annual meeting on the 9th. If we are under the current restrictions of a gathering of 10 or more, James Newsom, the moderator, will be I think he is putting some thought into it and some look at, is there a creative way that we can meet the statute, the obligation of holding a safe meeting and still give the community the right to vote? So James is looking at different alternatives, and he'll reach out to the attorney generals and the secretary of state. He's on it, and he's giving something. But that's, to be honest, that could be a long, that could be a long shot that we can create something that everybody's comfortable with. If May 9th doesn't work, so then there is, we don't have a budget, and we're under a statutory obligation to issue contracts by May 15th. That's, right now, that's a problem. And in the past, when that's happened, is notice of non-return have been given to teachers because we can't guarantee them a job. We don't know if we have the financial support for that level of contract. So that is something that I have talked with the union leadership about, and that's something that is part of this. If you don't have a budget, how do you guarantee a contract if you don't have the finances to support the number of contracts? So that is a safety mechanism for the making sure you have the funds to support the contracts. If we don't make it by the 9th, then that may be necessary. The next date in this to just think about is the end of June, because if we do provide a number of teachers, and one way to do this is all non-continuing contract teachers, that's within the contract and within our purview, is to take a look at the end of June. The reason, if we got a budget by the end of June, we could issue contracts to teachers who were given notice of non-return in time for them to keep health insurance. Because once we roll over on the fiscal, July 1, if we don't have an employee contracted, it's very difficult to keep them in health insurance because they don't have a contract and not part of the association, not part of the district. So those are the implications of the calendar. So if we are contemplating notice of non-return because we don't have a budget and we're concerned about the number of contracts we can support without having the funding, it's difficult to hire 2021. That's just awkward. So there's a little bit of timeline. There has been some discussion with the school board association attorney that we may get direction from the governor that may answer some of these questions in the next week or two. If that happens, then the board will have to be nimble and we'll have to adjust based on that. So we are preparing to hire 2021, but it's not having a budget passed makes that awkward with the statutory requirement to offer contracts by May 15th. Does that make sense? I don't know. It's hard for me to read all your body language going on that one. Jim and Andrew and I spoke about how in our district based on care, how do we care about teachers during this time? And I think one of the things that my philosophy has always been over communicate and be transparent, as honest as you can. So I'm perfectly, if the board would like to charge me communicating, I've already communicated with the heads of the union and I'm meeting with Hess tomorrow and we'll have a similar discussion, but send a letter to people about, just this process and where we're at so they have full understanding. It's not our fault. It's not, and this isn't fault. This is just the circumstances we find ourselves in because we weren't able to have a school district meeting, which honestly, no one disagreed with canceling or postponing that meeting.
Thank you, Steve. Questions or thoughts from any board members? Andrea.
Yeah, Steve, what was the feedback that you got from the head of the teachers union, just as far as letting them know where we were at?
They understood.
Mm-hmm.
I've given them a heads up earlier to this. This is probably the second time I've discussed this kind of timetable. I think they understand this current reality and would appreciate all the as much communication as I can to be honest with people as much as I can. They weren't. This isn't anger at us or at me. This is just where we're at. And we'll try to implement the statute in the most caring way, honest and transparent way as we move forward through this difficult times. The new piece is there may be some direction because this is so new. And I know of 6 school districts now. I think I had 5 the other day, Andrew and Jim, but I think I'm up to 6 that I know of that haven't passed the budget. And I'm sure there's double that in towns, I suspect, right? Because the towns are typically a little bit after schools. So that's where we're at.
Rob?
Steve, this is probably maybe a question for Jim, but or James Newsom. Has there been any talk at the state level of teasing out just the budget article and doing a mail vote. Is that anything you've heard anything about?
James has developed an interesting configuration that would take me 2 hours to explain it to you.
Okay.
But he is giving lots of thought to it, and he is reaching out to the right people, and certainly would facilitate a meeting between Jim, Andrea, Liz, because of that former board's connection. But I've enjoyed working with James Newsom, as he's really cares deeply about this process for this community in a safe, fair, right way. So he is giving it lots of reflection, reaching out to people to see if he can do something creative yet within the boundaries. The moderator does have significant authority about the vote.
Thank you.
Andrea.
I just, I just want to echo my support of making sure that we're bringing teachers along and bringing administrators along, so folks understand that if they do end up receiving a pink slip, that this is not us saying we don't want you to come back. It is literally, we have no budget right now. As soon as we have one, we will let you know. So I just wanted to speak in support of over communication, because I know this is a scary enough time for folks. And I just want our teachers to understand that we're not leaving them out to dry.
So I think if it's the board's pleasure, I'll put together a letter, and I can run it by Jim and Andrea. We can work on it together. Probably not tomorrow, to be honest, but Monday, Tuesday. And I think that something like this is probably best to send it out to the entire faculty. You know what I mean? There's enough anxiety and enough known that we'll put together something and send it out. I think I saw John and Scott. I think they're on this. I told them, I met with them today about this meeting. And again, I'm meeting with the head of HES tomorrow. We'll put together a letter with that sentiment, with where we're at and what we hope to do. I'm happy to do that for early next week.
Seth, did you have something you want to add before we leave? I just can't see you, so.
No, it's unfortunate, but it is, it sounds like everyone's doing all the right things. So,
and I just want to add, sort of piggyback a little bit on what Andrea said. I just think it's really important to communicate with everybody. So I like the idea of a letter to all faculty, because these are obviously challenging times, and families are all in different places, both financially, where their heads are at. And so keeping them updated to where we are, and then that enables them to make the choices that they need to make that's best for them and their families, and having a clear understanding of where we are in our decision making, I think is only fair to everybody. So the more we can communicate this, the better. And hopefully, I've talked to James as well, and he does have some creative ideas. And so hopefully, some of these will come together and we'll be able to move forward. But everybody should be aware and on the same page of what we're thinking, where decisions are, and that enables people to make their own personal choices.
So I think I've got my marching orders to draft something out over the weekend, share it with Andrea and Jim Monday, and we'll get it out Monday if we can. Does that sound okay?
I think that's great. Thank you, Steve.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So next item is early retirement.
So just a little bit of history. I don't know exactly when, but we had a staff member who applied for early retirement and was awarded early retirement. And then there's a March 15th deadline for acceptance of the board's early retirement. This year in the proposed contract, there was a significant change in the early retirement eligibility criteria. So in working with the association and the previous board, that staff member asked for an extension. That extension was granted until April 1st. April 1st, I think this was the other day, but prior to April 1st, Jim Brizard had noticed that he is declining the offer of early retirement. So he will not be taking advantage of the early retirement, which was within his timeline, his right granted by the board. So what that does is that the board is obligated to offer 3 by the contract. The board did that. 2 accepted, 1 did not. Now there is nothing, the remaining action by the board is the board has complete control to do anything to do something or nothing. There's nothing compelled in the contract anymore. This process could be over today. But one thing that the board could do, one staff member requested early retirement, and due to the numbers, it was not granted. So the board could go to that staff member and ask them if that desire still exists, because there is money in the budget for an early retirement, and that could be offered to that staff member. And I'm working with it seems like that would be the right thing to offer someone who wasn't right of first refusal. And then if that person accepted, the board could, grant it. Or the board, if that was not accepted, then the board could, if so desired, charge me to writing a letter to all teachers, opening it up again, and follow the same criteria that's in the current contract if there was more than one staff member that required it, and to fill that extra slot that was in the budget. Again, this is not compulsory. This is the board has choice, but this is considered not regular order. So though, and I have talked with John and Scott, if the staff member who was originally not awarded it, they still would go first in line next year because it's out of regular order. But it's just an additional opportunity if staff wanted to avail themselves. And I have no idea how the current climate either supports that or discourages that. I haven't given it that kind of thought, but there is an opportunity, and this has been done in the past. We did reopen early retirement, and we had a teacher whose circumstances changed from November to May, and the teacher did accept that offer previously. So there is past practice. I don't know if that made any sense, but that's where we are. So there is an open slot. The board can do nothing or it can do something.
It made good sense, Steve.
I'm having a tough time reading body language in this little format. You guys are all very good poker players, which I am not.
Norm, you raise your hand.
Yeah, Steve. I gotta be careful how I ask this. So this would be the extra spot that you would potentially ask in would be someone who had asked for early retirement?
Yes, I think that the right thing to do is someone who applied and did not get it would be to give them the first offer to refuse. That is close to regular order as we can. I think it would be difficult to offer to someone else who didn't apply. So I think that would be the first piece.
Okay. And when would you need to have a decision from this board in order to charge you with providing that opportunity to this individual?
The timeline is up to you, but it would make sense to me if the board wanted me to do this. You could do it by consensus tonight, and I could do it, between now and the next meeting. Or if you wanted to contemplate, you could charge me at the next meeting.
Jim, I'll let you
What's the argument?
Sorry, go.
Sorry, Steve, what's the argument to do nothing?
The money then goes, it's not spent, it would go into the unreserved fund balance. It would go back to the town. That would be just money that was not executed in the budget, so it wouldn't be spent.
And over time, do we financially benefit from early retirements because we hire a less expensive teacher? Is that?
Typically, the last couple of years, it's become a little bit more complex because sometimes staff members who leave are on a single or on a two-person, and we hire a family. But yes, overall, we do have to look over time that there is a savings to the district as part of the contract. But yes, Seth, overall, we very much typically save money over the execution of the early retirement program.
Okay. Roger, your hand up?
I do. Steve, I would support, and I would encourage the board to support that you extend that to the person who initially put in and was that fourth person. I don't know if I would open it up to faculty after that. People had made their decisions by those dates previously, and if they chose not to do that, then they knew what they were doing at the time. But I think it is the right thing to do to extend that offer to the person that was outside the line, so to speak.
I tend to agree with those sentiments, Rob. I do think offering it to that individual makes sense to me. And so I guess I'm less sure about whether or not they then open it up to everybody if that person declines. And maybe a next step is for the board, if we all agree, for the board to authorize Steve to approach that person who is next and offer it up, and then see where that goes. And if they decline, then come back to the board, you know, and we can have a conversation of whether or not we want to then open it up again. I don't know if that makes sense, but I guess what I'm hearing is, at least I haven't heard anybody say we shouldn't, you know, offer the early retirement to the next person who applied, and so maybe that's a good next step.
Happy to make that next step between now and the next meeting, and we can keep moving from there. Absolutely, have no problem doing that.
Does anybody disagree with that approach?
No, that's fine.
I agree with that approach.
Okay,
You got it.
perfect. Thank you, Steve. And one last item for you tonight, Steve.
So the last piece, and Michelle's back there, and I appreciate all her work on this. So it's pretty well our process right through in November, we get a GMR, a guaranteed maximum rate of health insurance increase. That goes through the budget process, and typically after our annual meeting, as happened this year, we get notice of the actual rate. So just to take us where we were at 6.4%. That combined with plan changes was about a $350,000 increase in the budget. Since then, we've got written notification from Health Trust that our actual increase is 2.3%, which will be about a $90,000 increase. It's not linear, simply because plan changes and all that has gone since, you know, even when we had the original plan in November. So there's a savings of $90,000 based on our actual as compared to our guaranteed max. And I was noticed of that, I think, Jim, I don't remember when I called you about it, but I got it written in writing just the other, a couple weeks ago, a week ago or something. Just an FYI to the board. That's all I had.
All right, I was muted. Any questions or thoughts on the board on the GMR? All right, I see a thumbs up, so we're good. So that's the last item for discussion, and so this is where I'm now going to slide in the opportunity for public comment. And so first, I want to thank. I still see there's a number of people still with us. They hung in there on the line, so one, really appreciate it. Hopefully, this has been a really in-depth and actually very interesting discussion. So hopefully you've all thought so as well, and we haven't bored you. Maybe you've had dinner over the discussion, which is great. So what I'm going to ask folks to do is, again, if you scroll your mouse down towards the bottom of your page on Zoom, you will see something called participants. If you click on that, you'll see a list of the participants, and there's a button on the bottom that says raise hand, and I see some of you have already taken advantages of that button. That'll help so that I can call on you guys as we go. So thank you very much. So I'm going to start the public comment with Mr. Goddard.
Thanks, Jim. So I had two quick requests of the board. First, I had a little difficulty joining the video part of the Zoom due to there being a password. I'd like to suggest that there's something inconsistent about having a public meeting with a password. If we could, going forward, just have the Zoom simply be published and accessible.
Yeah, Dennis, I don't want to cut you off, but I will say thank you for that. You know, this is new technology for us, and so we're learning as we go. And so I appreciate your comment, and our hope is we can avoid that in the future and avoid any confusion. So I appreciate the comment.
Cool. And second, you know, a number of agencies throughout the state are keeping us folks in the public abreast of their agency situation with respect to any new infections or other particular items of note. And that's really the one metric that I think a lot of agencies are keeping track of. I'd like to request if the Hopkinton school system could keep us in the public abreast of those numbers in each of these public meetings going forward as well.
Just so, I'm sorry, Dennis, just so I'm clear, don't unmute yourself yet. Which numbers would you like us, the numbers sort of in New Hampshire or in Merrimack County, like, or in the town?
Within the context of the Hopkinton school, so I'm aware that at least one individual in the employ, I understand, of the Hopkinton schools has been infected. Could we have a status running on these meetings as we go forward? How many infected do we have? Do we have any new? And you know, is that being tracked?
Thank you. And we'll see what we can do under sort of, there's all sorts of guidelines, but we can see what we can do to provide something. Thank you. All right, so next up is Pixel 3. And so I would just ask if you just, state your name and your address, if you don't mind. I should have asked Dennis to do that, which I apologize. Like we would at town meeting. And I will, there you go, you're unmuted.
Hi, so this is Danae Belt. Sorry, I hadn't logged into Zoom before. So I will fix that in the future. I would just like to say, Jim, thank you. You're doing a great job as board of the, heading the board. And as, two kids in the school system, Chris, you're doing a great job. My middle schooler is absolutely loving the total online content. My first grader is struggling a little bit with not having her friends to play with, but is doing well. And Steve, I completely support your plan for a 3-day break. I think that would be a fantastic middle ground for everything that's going on. And a great way to break through as far as still having a little bit of a break, but not so much that there's not continuity. As a nurse, who's working in the hospital currently, I would encourage the board to plan for schools being out for the remainder of the school system. As much as I would love for my kids to go back to school, I don't feel like that's going to be a possibility. I feel like at the end of May, we're going to be at our peak of how bad things are going to be, unfortunately. And so I would like for everybody to kind of have in their mindset that that is going to be how things are going to be, and planning for those kinds of things, how the end of the school year is going to look, what things are going to happen, how things are going to work. Because I do feel, again, as somebody who's in the midst of training people and actively working towards dealing with this situation, that's probably going to be what's going to happen. So I would like to say thank you to the board. Thank you to everybody who's working so hard to make all of these online things work. I love the idea of a more flexible 4-day with a 5th day flexible school day. As somebody who's working and needs to sleep at least 1 day during the week, having that flex day is very beneficial. So thank you to everybody. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, and thank you for all that you're doing as well. We all very much appreciate it. All right, Tammy.
Hi.
Hello, you're unmuted.
Thank you. I've got 2 questions.
Can you just state your full name? I'm sorry, just so we can make sure we record it.
Tammy Clay.
Thank you, Tammy.
62 Buckingham Lane in Hopkinton, in case you needed that. One question is, what is the cost to the taxpayers for the early retirement, the health benefits and all that stuff?
Do you want to ask your other question, and then I can see if you know the answer when we can get that.
Second question is, I am the chair of the scholarship committee for the local scholarship in town, and we usually give $12,000 to $13,000 a year to the graduating seniors. And I want to know, how are these seniors going to fill out their scholarship applications and have the required letters of reference and SAT requirements and all that stuff? Because I know I'm not the only one that requires that.
Good question, and probably something that some of our seniors may like to know. So Steve, I don't know if I can hand those two questions over to you.
Sure. The first one, early retirement, there's no healthcare connected to early retirement. It's simply, it is a contractual given. It is a contractual amount depending on the age of the applicant, somewhere between 45,000 and 17,000. And so it would have to be based on the age of this applicant. I'll get killed if I mention her. No, I'm just kidding. So it is very specific to that person, but it's based on the age that's in the contract.
But the taxpayers still pay that, right?
Yeah, and I can once we can get that, I can get that number. I don't know that person's age off the top of my head, but I can get that number for the next meeting if you'd like.
Okay.
Yeah, and that would be it's a public expenditure, so no problem. And I appreciate, so I have been in touch with some people regarding scholarships. Michelle Fisher, who's our registrar, is still connecting, she still has access to the SAT scores and all, and so that process is still going remotely, or if she has to pop in to get some forms. So I would say, Tam, you continue to reach out to Michelle. I'm involved in the Rotary scholarships as well, so we're connected with her work, but I believe that can all be managed remotely with maybe some drop in based on certain files that you need. But I think that process is still, it's a little clunkier, but I think it is moving forward. If you need any help, Chris will absolutely help, or I can help and reach out. Michelle is an extraordinary, Miss Fisher, I should say, is really extraordinary. She cares deeply about this process. So.
Yeah, she works with me too. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Tammy. Next, we have John Sejdi. I'm going to butcher the last names. I apologize profusely. John, let me unmute you. No, you're unmuted. Go for it.
Okay. John Segedy, I'm with the Stonebridge Post. I want to say that I have enjoyed being able to cover meetings this way. This is my second try at it. A couple of comments about that, though. The phone access, I did try that and it worked, but I had a concern and I asked Steve, he wasn't able to answer about the cost of the phone call. I live in Hillsborough, so would be a toll call from my old-fashioned landline. So it would be good to know for people whether or not it's a toll call or not, because for a couple-hour meeting that could add up. I could also see trying to hold the phone. I'm sure Seth's hand and ear are probably getting very tired. Wait. On the communication issue that Andrea had brought up, I would just point out we have a calendar section in our paper, and once things get back to normal, would certainly encourage you to send any items that you want put out to the public. And one last thing, the items in your support material folder, I was able to I can view them through the thing, but I was having trouble downloading them so that I could refer back to them when I'm writing an article. I don't know if that's something that I'm just technologically having problems with, or it's something that the system just doesn't allow. But
well, thank you. Yeah, no, thank you. On the phone number, we'll look into that, because I do think finding a number making sure that we have a toll-free number or some workaround for that, I think is a really good point. And so we will look into that. And then on the documents, you should be able to download them. But if you're having any trouble, we can work with you and we can email you the documents. I mean, they're all publicly available documents. So if you are having trouble, just shoot Steve or someone over the SAU, and we can make sure you get those.
Thank you.
Thank you. I saw another hand up earlier, but it went away. And so I'm just going to ask one more time for public comment. Does anybody else there wish to provide any comment to the board? Seeing none, so I just want to reiterate that all of our contact information for the board and the superintendent is on the website. And so if people do have comments, please email us. The opportunity is always here to provide public comments during the board meetings. But we do want to hear from you. So if you have questions, comments, concerns, please don't be shy and share with us. All right, so we are, I'm just going to put our agenda back up here. So we have, we're at the end of the agenda. We have one action item that we'll take. And then Steve, do we have a need for a non-public this evening?
I do not, unless you do. I do not.
I do not. So there'll be no non-public. So what I would ask is if there is a motion for the Hopkinton School Board to appoint Norm Gupel to serve as a representative to the Hopkinton Budget Committee.
So moved.
I make that motion. I second Rob's motion.
Thank you, Seth.
There we go. There's been a motion and a second. And so this is I'm going to have to call your name and then you get to tell us all how you're going to vote. So we'll start with Andrea.
Andrea Folsom votes yes.
Rob.
Rob Nato votes yes.
Seth.
Seth A. Frame, yes.
Jim O'Brien will vote yes. And Norm.
Thank you, guys. Looking forward to it. So it's a yes for me. Thank you.
Perfect. And thank you, Norm, for volunteering and agreeing to serve in that capacity.
Thank you.
So we have no need for a non-public meeting. And so I guess, is there any other items that any board member wishes to bring up at this point? All right, seeing none, I would ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second.
All right, there's been a motion and a second. This is non-debatable, so I won't debate it. But what I will say is thank you to everybody. Again, this is not the easiest style of meeting in which to both participate, to listen, to facilitate. It's all a challenge, but everybody, I love the energy everybody's bringing to this. Everybody is paying attention, offering comments, staying involved and engaged, which is very important. If you have any feedback for any portion of this, like how I conduct the meetings, the way that we're moving through items, if this doesn't feel right, this goes for board members and also say for staff, for the public, please contact me, shoot me an email, let me know how we can improve what we're doing. These meetings are in service of getting our work done as a board, but also in service of the public. And so we're trying to get it right. I'm trying to get it right as facilitator. It's not easy. And so any constructive feedback and criticism will be very welcome on my part, because we want to get it right, and knowing it's not the easiest thing to follow and just stick through. So with that soliloquy, we have a motion to adjourn, so I'm going to ask the board to vote, and I can't ask you to do it all in favor, so it's more fun this way too. So Andrea.
Oh, I vote yes.
Norm.
Yes.
Rob.
Yes.
Seth, if you say no, it's going to be daggers.
Seth A. Frame, yes.
All right, so Jim O'Brien's a yes. Thank you, everybody. Have a great weekend, and our next meeting is on the 16th. We'll see you then. Good night.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Be safe.
Bye, everyone.
Be safe.
Bye-bye.
Bye.